So today I'm going to put you guys to work. So I'm going to try, the plan is I'm hoping to keep the formal presentation part down to 5 minutes. I just want to tell you just what you need to know in order to do the task I'm going to ask you to do, which is to critique some materials that I've handed out. And then hopefully we'll have, I'll give you guys some time to do that, and then we'll talk. And my goal is to take your thoughts and comments on those materials and start distilling them into criteria so I can start building a rubric. And the kind of rubric I kind of have in mind is something that not only faculty can use, but that I could give to a student. Say, okay, what did you think of this particular exploration? That's what I call my materials. Fill this rubric out, and that way I can use their feedback as well as other faculty feedback, and I can use them eventually when I ask for external reviews. So that's kind of the goal. Whether we get there or not, we'll see. Let me tell you a little bit about the course and the history and the institution. So I'm at Ferris State University. This is in Big Rapids, Michigan. It's about an hour north of Grand Rapids. If you know anybody from Michigan, you know what I'm doing here. Ferris State University bills itself as an opportunity university. So we get a lot of first-generation students, a lot of low-achieving, high-math anxious students. A lot of our students are precisely the kind of disenfranchised students that Julian and Philip were talking about in their plenary presentation. This course arose as a result of some conversations the math department had with the business faculty at Ferris. So the business faculty were frustrated because our intermediate algebra course, which is our standard university graduation requirement at Ferris, was not serving their students, and their students were having trouble in their courses because they weren't getting what they needed out of the intermediate algebra course. So as a result of this discussion, we decided to create a new alternative intermediate algebra course that I named Quantitative Reasoning for Business. And we, as a committee, we kind of distilled what the content outcomes were going to be for that course. But in the course of those discussions, the business faculty kept saying over and over again, our students just need to be better problem solvers. And as often as that came up, I said, how do we do this? IBL. And that's how this became an IBL course. Not that it wouldn't have been a good idea regardless. Then last year we did a two-semester pilot of a one-semester course that replaced our intermediate algebra. And based on the successes and the shortcomings of that experience, we have broadened this into a two-semester sequence now that's going to replace beginning and intermediate algebra. So what you're going to be looking at is QRB 2.0. The materials that I'm handing out are from the first course in the two-semester sequence. All right, let me tell you a little bit about the students. There are a variety of business majors. Like I said before, I think Julian and Philip described our disenfranchised students extremely well. And you might think, well, they're business majors. They shouldn't be that anxious about math. Well, a lot of these majors a lot of these students are in programs like hospitality or human resources management or music industry management. Not necessarily the finance and accounting type students that at least I tend to think of when I think of business students. So they do fit that profile quite well. We do occasionally get a finance or accounting students, but not as much. Nevertheless, they have to take finance and accounting courses, so I kind of have that in the back of my mind as I design this course, among other things. And as I mentioned before, the course is going to be replacing beginning and intermediate algebra. Little bit more information about the courses. So as I mentioned, it's an inquiry-based learning course, primarily motivated by this need to develop better problem solvers. But in addition, communication outcomes are important, and there's some other things we can get at through IBL that I'll mention on probably the next slide or the slide after. It's a conceptual approach, hence the reason I call it quantitative reasoning, and I think that conceptual approach is strongest in an IBL format. I try to couch as much as possible within authentic business context and even authentic business problems when possible. And finally, this is, I think, a really interesting aspect of this course. We're one section of the pilot. Last year we only did one section. Now we're going to do multiple sections, but one section is going to be linked with an English course, and we have a sequence of 2 freshman English courses that students take, and the 2 courses are going to be linked, and we're going to have a cohort go through that. So I'm really working hard to get my English professor colleague to use Michael Starbird's book. The outcomes, these are the content outcomes that pretty much came out of our conversations with the business faculty. And they're grouped by courses. So in the first course, we're going to start with proportional reasoning. That's our first unit. Second unit is on using data to make business decisions. And then the last 2 units are about constructing and reading formulas and finally manipulating formulas, which is something they do a lot in their business courses. And then in the second semester, we're going to start with linear modeling. The focus of the second semester is really on modeling and prediction. So we're going to start with 2 units on linear modeling, one on the idea of linearity and constructing the models, and the second is on the analysis, some linear programming, just a taste of that. Then we're going to go on to exponential models and finally using logarithms to solve business problems. And then I have these non-content-based outcomes, and this is where the IBL really comes in. So I mentioned the problem solving, communication. I came up with this idea for this coming year to add in ethics. I came up with this term that I couldn't find on Google, quantitative ethics. So I have these little quantitative ethics questions sprinkled occasionally throughout the course to get them to think about, as producers of math, how are they going to use their math ethically, and also technology, Excel. It's, of course, very important in a business environment. Okay, so that's the background on the course. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Every table has 2 piles. One pile is a form I'd like you guys to write on. So this is basically how I've been revising my materials so far, as I think, what do I like that I want to keep, and what needs changing, and are there any other thoughts on this? The second pile are explorations. So each table has a separate exploration. So what I'd like you guys to do is get together, and maybe some of you guys, if you're sitting alone, will have to maybe move so that you have some people to talk to. But I'd like you to look through the exploration that's at your table and fill this thing out. And then the goal is, I'll give you guys maybe 5-10 minutes to work on this. How are we doing on time? Okay, maybe about 10 minutes, and then we'll take about 5 minutes for you guys to share some of your thoughts, and maybe we can start distilling some criteria. And if you're interested in continuing this process of developing a rubric, you can either put your content name on this sheet, or if you want to leave it anonymous, I have a sheet I can pass around, or you can leave a business card. Just a few things about these. These are at various stages in my editorial process. So for some of you, for example, back in that corner, I don't have a narrative introduction. I mean, all my explorations have like a narrative introduction and then the IBL stuff. So you see insert narrative introduction. A couple of these refer to spreadsheets that you're not going to have access to. So you have to keep that in mind. And I'm really kind of putting myself out here. So I'm making myself vulnerable. So please be constructive. All right, so go ahead. I'll shut up. Minutes, I was just told, so another minute or two, kind of wrap up your conversations, and then we'll share. All right, so let's hear what some of your comments are. I had a lot of really nice conversations. I really enjoyed having them. And now I'd like to hear some of your comments, and then we'll see how many we can hear, and then we'll see if we can distill each comment into a criteria.
For our exploration on substitution, you had many questions that said kind of, explain why this works. I really like that. I think, again, in the spirit of inquiry, that's really important, especially at this level. A lot of students will know how to get the right answer, but not know how to explain how they got the right answer, the whole show your work thing. I would say, for instance, question 6, explain in one sentence why your final formula in question 4 makes sense. I think that can be a little bit vague, and they can just, I've had students just essentially repeat what they would have said in question 4 and say, that's why it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I think being a bit more specific about that could be helpful, especially if this is a new type of thing, explaining at this level for the students, kind of guiding them in that direction might be helpful.
Hi, I'm Joyati Debnath. I'm from Winona State University. I actually got two sets of problem sets. That's okay, one from him and one from them. The interesting thing I like about the exploration 1.14 is, as you can see, I'm foreign born, and these exchange rates and cost of gasoline and the prices of different things and different countries just amazes me. And this is a very, very good idea for our students to know, especially then this becomes, their mind becomes open worldwide. And so that's really good. So I really, really like it. We talked among ourselves about another skill where you can add a saying, not only just confident levels, but also can you communicate? Can a student to skill in communicating to the peers or classmate or something, that. And then I also suggest that on this exchange rate, like on the hamburger problem, I mean Big Mac, maybe a picture of Big Mac will attract them, or some kind of colored picture. Really gets their attention, I have noticed, because I also teach similar kind of courses, and pictures of plane going, and sometimes the pilot announces the temperature and in degree centigrade, and they need to know how they want to get out, and they need to change it to degree Fahrenheit. So some kind of picture will also enhance this learning.
I love that idea.
My name is Dana Olenoff. I like that you use this quantitative ethics question at the end. And I saw the relationship between the activity and the question, but I was wondering if the students make that connection, and I was thinking that maybe you could ask them, like, what do you see as the connection between what we just did and this question that I'm asking you that is not related to business necessarily or whatever, but it's related to the math that we're doing.
Here's how I'm going to word that, see if this sounds like what you're saying. Students are, as a criteria, students are encouraged to make connections between questions, and then in parentheses, to try to get at the ethics, but to try to be broad enough. I put especially reflection and et cetera questions, and I'll have to think about quite how to word that, but that's kind of the ethics and the developing algebra intuition questions that some of you guys probably saw too. So, great, so are we out of time?
We are out of time.